Good morning, Hosho staff, students, and families. Ya'ateyabin, we're ready to start our day, so please stand. Place your right hand over your heart. Voices are off, bodies are still. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, November 17th, and I have some music for us to listen to from Mrs. Neff that she's put on our playlist. Do you remember the title and the composer? See if you remember. Do you remember? Simple Gifts by Aaron Copland, a composition by Aaron Copland in a ballet called Appalachian Spring. Right. Let's see. Do you remember this piece? Did you guess Antonio Vivaldi's Four Seasons? Which season? Autumn. We're still in autumn. That's right. How about this piece? Do you remember? Fast Moving Flight of the Bumblebee by Rimsky-Korsakov. All right. So for our poem this week, we're doing Nancy Bird Turner's First Thanksgiving of All. Thanksgiving's next week, and we said yesterday that Abraham Lincoln made it a national holiday during the middle of the Civil War, at a time when our nation was at probably one of its worst points, if not the worst point. Middle of the Civil War says, let's have a day of prayer and thanksgiving, and makes it a national holiday on the fourth Thursday of every November. We had celebrated Thanksgiving in different ways in different states. Different states had it even on different days. So this was the first time the nation came together and had the same holiday of Thanksgiving on one particular day, and took it as a day off from work and to celebrate with our families. Based on the first Thanksgiving back in 1621 in Plymouth, Massachusetts, not too far from where I grew up, and Mrs. Temkett has reminded us there is a museum there, and maybe when you are in 8th to 9th grade, when we go to New England, maybe that's a stop we could make, because they have a museum there where you can see how life was back in that day, see a replica of the Mayflower, and wonder if you would come across the ocean on a boat that looked like that. Mrs. Hillock would definitely not. Definitely not. Stayed in England. No, not that adventurous. And so the first Thanksgiving of all talks about not only did adults come over, but children came over as well. And then children were born here in the colonies, the English colonies. And so this is the first Thanksgiving of all by Nancy Bird Turner. Peace and Mercy and Jonathan, in patience very small, stood by the table giving thanks, the first thanksgiving of all. There was very little for them to eat, nothing special and nothing sweet, only bread and a little broth and a bit of fruit and no tablecloth. But Peace and Mercy and Jonathan and Patience in a row stood up and asked a blessing on Thanksgiving long ago. Thankful that their ship had come safely across the sea, thankful they were for hearth and home and kin and company. They were glad of broth to go with their bread, glad their apples were round and red, glad of Mayflowers they would bring out of the woods again next spring. So Peace and Mercy and Jonathan, in patience very small, stood up gratefully giving thanks, the first thanksgiving of all. When we think of Thanksgiving, we think of the turkey and pumpkin pie. That did not happen. That was not the way. Maybe they had turkey, but they didn't have pumpkin pie. But they were celebrating a thankfulness from the harvest. The colonists, the pilgrims who had come, Puritan separatists, had come and landed in Massachusetts, were grateful to the local Native American people who had helped them learn how to grow different foods in this new land that they were not familiar with. It's different here than it is in England, and how things grow and how to plant things. And so they relied on the Native American people to help them. And so they celebrated together in 1621 that their harvest had been plentiful. And you know, Thanksgiving then, it took 3 days. And together they celebrate and ate, but mostly things like nuts and fish and maybe some venison, and all of the things that they had grown together, the vegetables they had grown together. So Thanksgiving is a little different. Somehow it has turned into pumpkin pie, but I'm glad for that. And so remember we said Peace, Mercy, and Patience were all names that common names for children back in the day. And I think that they were so grateful that their children had survived, and they gave them these names to say mercy, peace, because those were the things that they were so grateful for. Okay, remember yesterday we had talked about the anniversary of Ruby Bridges, and I told you about Norman Rockwell. We had studied Norman Rockwell, and I actually neglected to tell you that the title of this piece is The Problem We All Live With. 1964, he painted this in honor of Ruby Bridges going to school for the very first time in 1960 in New Orleans when schools were desegregated. And sadly, like we said, there was a time when we were so divided that people of different colors could not even go to the same school. Sad to think that, but look how far we've come, and be grateful for that. And be grateful that our country is one that's always trying to improve. We can't always say that we're glad for how things were, but we can always be proud that we're trying to make things better as we go forward. So I have another Norman Rockwell illustration for you, and this is called Home for Thanksgiving. Norman Rockwell's Home for Thanksgiving. Why do you think it's called Home for Thanksgiving? What do you notice about this gentleman here? He's wearing a uniform. This was painted in 1945. What was going on in 1945? World War II. World War II. And we see in 1945, this is how my great-grandmother used to dress. Exactly like this. The apron, the flowered dress, and those shoes, the same. And this looks very much like how my grandparents' house looked. So 1945, Norman Rockwell, Home for Thanksgiving. And thinking about things about being grateful that he's home for Thanksgiving. He's smiling, and we don't have to have something spectacular, do we? We don't have to have all kinds of riches and presents. Sometimes just being able to be around each other is what we love the most about Thanksgiving. And that's what makes it kind of the hardest thing about this Thanksgiving this year, is that some of us have to be separated because of COVID-19. but like mercy and patience, when they said they were in the poem that they were thinking forward to spring, they were so excited, thankful that they'd be able to bring mayflowers out of the forest in the spring. And we can look forward to that too. One day this coronavirus will be behind us and we'll have positive things to look forward to. So yesterday, when I did the announcements, I actually had to do them 2 or 3 times because there were problems, they got interrupted, things happened, so I wasn't able to post the original one. And so on one of them, I announced birthdays, and on another, I did the Bill of Rights. But I think on the one that got posted, neither one of those things happened. So I apologize to our 2 gentlemen friends who had birthdays yesterday. And that's Colin and Zachary had birthdays yesterday. No birthdays today, but yesterday, Colin and Zachary. So I hope you both had a great birthday, and I apologize for it being belated. And the Bill of Rights. Remember, we talked about 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and now we're on to the 5th Amendment. Studying them, trying to memorize them so that they're part of our easy knowledge that we need to recall. What is the 2nd Amendment? When you hear that on TV, when they're talking about our 2nd Amendment rights, that's one that comes up a lot. Or if you're watching a television show and you hear something about, I'm taking the 5th Amendment. Well, now you know what all those things are. And you know them for your own self when, if you ever have a problem or need to petition the government for a redress of grievances, right? That you know because you know what your rights are. So let's talk about the 1st Amendment. Let's say it together. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. 2nd Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. 3rd Amendment. No soldier shall in time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor during time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. 4th Amendment. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. All right. Okay, 5th Amendment. So the first part talks about you cannot be charged with a capital crime, the most serious crime, unless that there's an indictment by a grand jury before you even go to trial. And that you cannot be tried for the same crime twice, right? The government cannot bring you up on charges twice. They have one chance, and if they have to have all their evidence. And you do not have to testify against yourself. You can remain silent. Oh, and Mr. Guerrero corrected me on something because he was a former police officer. Apparently, you do not have to have your rights read to you, Miranda rights to you, every time you're arrested, but anytime you're interrogated, anytime the police want to question you, you have the right to remain silent. So I stand corrected on that. And it's an important point to know that despite the fact that the police give you your rights, tell you what your rights are or not, you'll already know them because you know the 5th Amendment. You know that you have the right to remain silent. Okay, and that you have to have the due process of law before the government can do anything like put you in prison or take anything away from you. And that nobody can take anything, your property away from you without just compensation, even if the government needs it to build a road or to do something to help the community. They have to pay you for it. So that's the content of the 5th Amendment that we've been talking about. So let's read it together. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb. Nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Right? Okay, so we'll try practicing the Fifth Amendment together. So hopefully you have the first, second, third, and most of the fourth down and able to say them, and I hope you say them with me. Okay, the only other announcements is that we have our wreaths for sale. $20 for the artificial ones, smaller ones. The larger real wreaths are $30, and we will be making them and have them available to be picked up on December 2nd. We'll send information about where you can get them and how we'll pick them up. Hopefully we can do that because of the closure. And that the money from the wreaths go to our athletics department. Okay, friends, that's all we have for today. So let's say our student pledge. I will do the good, I will learn the true, and I will love the beautiful. And I hope you have a great day today.